Hey guys, it's Bella and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all having an incredible day today. In today's video, we're going to be covering another case for my 12 days of Christmas. I hope you guys are enjoying my 12 days of Christmas this year, and let's go ahead and get into today's case. In December of 1992, downtown Dayton was filled with lights and activities, and they have this really cute holiday festival that they do every year where they put up this big tree and they do this big interactive light show. And I don't know about you guys, but I love Christmas lights. They put me in such a good mood. Every single year, Carrie and I go Christmas lighting and we eat junk food, and then we come home and we watch Christmas movies, and it's just the best. And this year, we finally got our first set of lights for our house, and we got this giant Santa. It makes me so happy. So anyway, this Christmas tree that they put up in downtown Dayton was on Courthouse Square, and then across the road, Dayton Arcade, they had temporarily reopened with a pop-up shop and all these food places for the holidays. It honestly sounds so cute. Unfortunately though, this Christmas wouldn't end up so cheerful for the residents of Dayton. Between the 24th and the 26th of December, this group of teenagers who call themselves the Downtown Posse, which first of all, can we just acknowledge how lame that is? Imagine calling yourselves the Downtown Posse. I am so embarrassed. The group was made up of Laura Taylor, Heather Matthews, DeMarcus Smith, and then the ringleader, Marvalis Keene, and he considered himself the head of the group, and together they murdered 5 people in Dayton, Ohio for seemingly literally no reason other than the fact that they thought it was a bit of fun. This is considered one of the worst crimes to happen in Dayton, and for it to have happened on Christmas and Christmas Eve, a time that people are celebrating and spending time with their family and their friends and their loved ones, it's this time of year that so many people look forward to. It's honestly just so sad. So Marvalis Keene was born on the 5th of July in 1973. He was 19 years old in 1992, and he had a 16-year-old girlfriend named Laura Taylor. I mean, immediately, do I even need to say anything else for you guys to realize this guy's bad news? That is weird. But there's not really a lot known about his upbringing. Apparently he was a good kid though. He was a good student, never been arrested, but then his older brother was killed while committing a robbery in 1991, and everything changed. He just changed. He became really angry all the time. He had a really bad temper. And basically he just withdrew from everything. Early in 1992, he moved to California to be with his father, but then he moved back to Dayton in August because they fought over money or something. So he went back to his mum in Dayton for a few months, but then at the start of December, he left his mum's place and went to live in a cheap hotel with his girlfriend Laura on Yuma Place. Laura and the rest of the group were all misfits. They were all estranged from their families. I guess that's the kind of person that Marvalis would recruit for his posse. They say Marvalis was the ringleader of the posse, and yeah, he might have been the ringleader and the recruiter of the posse, but it really seems like Laura Taylor, his 16-year-old girlfriend, was the ringleader for these murders. And we'll get into that. On the 23rd of December, they're staying at this hotel and they're running out of money pretty quickly. Laura apparently said to Marvalis and DeMarcus, who was 17 at the time, and then his girlfriend Heather, who was 20 at the time, and apparently she said, let's go get some drama in our lives. And she comes up with this whole idea of going to rob people to get some money, and the first person she decides to rob is actually somebody she knew. His name was Joseph Wilkerson. He was 34 years old and he was doing pretty well for himself. He had a nice car, he worked at General Motors, and they paid him pretty well, and he was known to occasionally pay for sex. So Laura tells Joseph that she and Heather would have an orgy with him on Christmas Eve. The next day, Christmas Eve rolls around, Marvalis packs up his guns, which are 2 .25 caliber guns, handguns. He and Taylor leave the hotel that they were staying at, and they're walking. They meet up with Heather Matthews. She was actually recently out of prison, and she was also addicted to crack cocaine, so she was in it because she needed some money to fuel her addiction. So they walk to Joseph's house because none of them have a car, and they're there, they're having a drink with him, and then Laura goes into the bedroom with Joseph, and he thinks that this orgy that she's promised him is about to start. And keep in mind that Laura is 16 years old, so this whole situation is just really messed up. Marvalis and Heather then come into the room a couple minutes later, and Joseph starts getting undressed, ready for his orgy, and then Laura and Heather start pretending to get undressed, and then Marvalis pretends to pull down his pants, but he does a quick one. He says, nah, pulls up his pants, and then he pulls out a gun. He tells Joseph to get on the bed, and then after he gets on the bed, Laura and Heather tie him up with electrical wire. And while he's tied up, the girls just start going through his apartment, stealing stuff. They steal. It seems like they're like not stealing so much for money. They're just like stealing things that they want. They steal a hair curler, a hair dryer, a microwave, a cordless phone, and then also a TV. And there's like these two girls carrying this TV, and it like, back then, in 1992, the TVs were still really big with the big backs, they were super heavy. But like I said, Joseph had a car, so they're down in his garage, like loading up his car with all the stuff they were taking, and while they were down there, Marvelous Keene finds out that he has a gun. He has a .32 caliber gun in his garage, so Keene takes this back up to the bedroom where Joseph is tied up. He uses a bunch of blankets and pillows in the room to try and muffle it, so he must have shot Joseph at quite a close range. And between all of these sheets and the pillows, he shoots Joseph in the chest with his own gun. Then Laura and Heather come back into the room after hearing the shots, and apparently like Joseph is still alive, he's bleeding, he's shaking, he's obviously terrified, and Keene is trying to shoot him again, but I guess there's no bullets in the gun or it wouldn't work. So Keene hands Laura, the 16-year-old, his .25 caliber gun, and she shoots him in the head and kills him. Keene, Laura, and Heather then go into Joseph's car. They leave and they go to this like crack house, I guess. I think their friend was running this crack house, so they were going there and he was like letting them sleep there for a little while, have a little nap before, you know, getting back on their killing spree. So they have a nap, they leave again, and they go and pick up Heather's boyfriend, DeMarcus. And he's had some issues with the law as well. He'd been arrested before and he was wanted by police at the time for violating his parole. And they're all out walking together and looking for their next victim. As they're walking down Neil Avenue, they see a girl named Danita Gillette, and she was only 18 years old. She was still in high school. She was a senior at Patterson's Cooperative High School, and she had a 2-year-old child. As they passed her, she was making a call at a phone booth at the time, and they all approached her. There was literally no reason for them to go up to her, to disturb her. Like, they did not have any reason at all to do what they did. They were just evil people who just wanted to kill somebody. So Keene and DeMarcus take out their guns and they're apparently pointing them at her through the phone booth. Keene is holding his .25 caliber and apparently he says, "Merry Christmas, bitch." And it's the 24th of December, so it's freezing out, and they make her take off her jacket, they make her take off her feelers shoes, and they take them. And then they fired 9 shots into the phone booth as Danita begged for her life. And then, like it was nothing, the 4 of them just walk away. DeMarcus is carrying her shoes, Laura Taylor is wearing her jacket. Like, these people actually have no remorse at all. They've just left this innocent girl lying on the footpath dead. They also took Danita's bag, and once they got back to their apartment or their hotel or whatever, they're like going through all the stuff. They empty out her bag, they empty out her coat, and literally they killed this woman over 50 cents because that is all they got off her. 50 cents, a coat, and a pair of shoes. They also shot her in a public place. Like, it wasn't a back street or anything, it was public. There were people there. So people in the area call the police and they come, they arrive at the scene. There's a big puddle of blood around her. They find that 5 of the 9 shots had hit her. The casings for the 9 shots were found, they were picked up, and they were found to be .25 caliber Blazer aluminum bullet shell casings. And they're a pretty cheap sort of ammunition. They're something people generally get for like target practice, not actual shooting. Like, if you were going hunting, this is not something you would be using. But this was definitely a bit of a clue for investigators because the crime itself was so random. They had no connection to this girl at all, so this was a really big clue for them, especially considering it's definitely not something that people would usually use. So the downtown posse, I literally cannot take the name seriously, they all go back to Heather's place and they're hanging out with 2 more people now. They're hanging out with 16-year-old Wendy Cottrell and her boyfriend Marvin Washington. They're all hanging out, celebrating Christmas as if they didn't just shoot 2 people. Heather's ex-boyfriend, he's 28, his name's Jeffrey Wright. He comes over and he and Heather start arguing and he leaves. But then he comes back and he's super upset about the fight they had. I have no idea what they argued about, but he's pretty upset about it and he's pretty angry about it. So he comes in, he grabs Heather's hair and he drags her into a bedroom. And she's dating 17-year-old DeMarcus Smith. He's there. He sees this happen. So he gets up, he follows them to the bedroom, and he starts chasing Jeffrey around, just shooting him. Jeffrey's lying on the ground and he's like, look, I'm done if you are, like raising a white flag, but DeMarcus is pissed and he just empties his gun into him. But he's a bad shot. He's a really bad shot because he just gets his leg. That's it. Maybe he wasn't trying to shoot him, but either way, he didn't hit anything vital. Jeffrey manages to get out. He makes his way to a neighbor's house, and his neighbor brings him to a police station to make a report of what had happened. I assume after that he goes to a hospital because he's fine, he survived. But obviously it's not great for the posse that he got out, so I guess they could only assume that he probably went to police. Laura Taylor, the 16-year-old, she also had an ex-boyfriend. His name was Richard Maddox. He was 19, and I guess she had some issues with him. She didn't like him. He also had a car, he had some money, so she decided that she wanted to kill him. So the next day, it's Christmas Day, and the group sets out to do just that. Laura coaxed Richard out from his parents' house, and she got in his truck with him, and then they left. They were driving away, and DeMarcus, Keen, and Heather were following him in a car behind them that they had stolen. Eventually, Richard notices them following him, so he starts to speed up, and that's when Laura Taylor pulls out a .25 caliber gun, she puts it to his head, and she shoots him in the temple. Quickly then, she takes like his money, his wallet, whatever he has on him that she wanted, and she jumps out of the car, and she gets out pretty much unscathed. She has a sore leg and a bit of a limp for a day or two, but that's it. Like, her boyfriend's in this truck that then crashed into a tree, and he's just sitting there dead. And like, people saw this, and like, it got reported in, and police arrived at the crime scene. Anyway, the next day, on the 26th of December, they went to a gas station to look for some more people to rob. At first, they actually went to an ATM and tried to rob someone there, but that didn't work, so that's when they decided to go to the gas station. When they get there, Keen and DeMarcus get out of the car, and they start just shooting at some woman, and she's just there like trying to put some air in her tires. Luckily though, they're not good shots, so she manages to get away, but they take her Dodge Shadow car. From there, they headed to a mini mart. It was this little convenience store. It was on the corner of West 5th Street. It was a little run down, but they decided to rob it. So Laura Taylor heads into the mini mart first to kind of scope the place out, see what they're working with. There was only 2 people working that day and 1 or 2 customers inside the shop. Laura buys a packet of gum, she makes some small talk with the cashier, and the cashier is a 38-year-old woman named Sarah Abraham. She's a mother to an 11-year-old, and her and her family actually owned the mini mart. They start talking about what juice is good because Laura wants to buy a juice, and Sarah recommends this juice, and Laura can't afford it. So there's this older guy, a customer there, he's 71 years old, he's a regular. His name is Jimmy Thompson, and he spotted her for the drink. He gave her the money for the drink. This poor, sweet old guy is lending her some money to buy this juice she can't afford, just doing a nice thing. No idea that she's actually there to shoot the place up and he's gonna get caught in it. And you know, same with the cashier. Like, this woman is just standing there having a chat to her, recommending her a juice. No idea that she is there to case the joint out to shoot them. So right after this, Keen and DeMarcus come in with their guns out and they start telling Sarah to empty the cash register and give them all of the money in there. Which she does, but there's only $44 inside. Is $44 really worth somebody's life? She hands it to Keen and immediately he shoots her twice, once in the mouth and once in the head. He shoots at 2 other people in the store, 1 worker and another customer. Luckily, both of these guys survive, and so does the 71-year-old man named Jimmy Thompson. He, when all of this was happening, actually got down on the ground and just pretended he had been shot and pretended he was dead, and he managed to get out unharmed. Sadly, Sarah did not die straight away. She died a few days later in hospital, which is so sad. Like, they didn't even know this woman. She had done nothing wrong. She helped Laura figure out out what juice she wanted. She was a mother, and she had to suffer in hospital from this gunshot wound for 5 days until she eventually died. Police were obviously called to the scene, and when they got there, they actually found the same shell casings from the same type of bullets that they found at Donita Gallette's crime scene at the payphone. The survivors from the shooters at the mini mart were also able to give a pretty good description of the 4 people that came in to shoot the place up, and they were also able to give a pretty good description of the car that they were driving. So police are starting to connect the dots that all of these crime scenes that they've been having to go to over the past 2-3 days are all connected, and they all have the same shell casings, including at Richard Maddox's crime scene, the one where Laura Taylor shot her ex-boyfriend in the car. When police were brought there, people were able to describe the car that was seen driving away, they were able to describe the perpetrators, and they found the same bullets there again. As police are starting to catch on, it seems like the group knew, and things just started like imploding within them. Keen and DeMarcus were getting really paranoid. They didn't like how many people knew about what was going on, and they were worried that somebody would turn them in. Because, like, for example, when they were at Heather's house and they were with those 2 people, Wendy and her boyfriend Marvin, they weren't directly involved in the crimes, but they knew about them because these people, like this group of 4, had just been bragging about it all. They kept switching the number plates between their cars, like they switched them a million times, like just in the space of a day, and they would always take a different car with a different number plate every single time they went out. Now, like I mentioned, 16-year-old Wendy Cottrell and her boyfriend Marvin Washington were hanging out with the group on Christmas Eve. They knew everything that had happened, and Keen and DeMarcus didn't like that. They were getting really sus on them. They hadn't been involved in the murders, but they knew about them. So Keen and DeMarcus go to pick them up in a car, and they're with their friend Nicholas Woodson, so he's also with them, and it's the 5 of them driving around. They go to a bottle shop, and then Keen decides he wants to go and visit his brother's grave, so they go to a cemetery. Once they leave the cemetery, they go and drop Nicholas Woodson off, and then it's Keen, DeMarcus, Wendy, and Marvin, and they all go to this big gravel pit. It's a city-owned gravel pit. It's on Ridgely Avenue, and when they get there, they force 16-year-old Wendy and her 19-year-old boyfriend Marvin out of the car, and they start grilling them, like questioning them about whether or not they had gone to the police, whether or not they'd said anything, if they'd snitched on them. And they're telling them that they haven't said anything because they hadn't said anything, they hadn't gone to the police. But Keen and DeMarcus don't believe them. And so at this point, Keen shoots Wendy Cottrell and DeMarcus shoots Marvin Washington. Now, this guy, Nicholas Woodson, that they were with earlier, I promise that wasn't like a totally irrelevant piece of information that I was giving you that meant nothing because he was so uninvolved. He was actually a very crucial person in all of this. While the 5 of them were driving around, DeMarcus and Keen were talking about all these murders they'd committed because obviously they knew that they were going to kill Wendy and Marvin, so they didn't really care that they were talking about it because they didn't think it would get out. But this guy Nicholas was so freaked out by the whole thing, he was so scared of them, he was so scared of what they'd done, that immediately after he drops them off, or they drop him off, he calls the police. He told the police that they had been murdering and robbing people a bunch over the last few days, and that they wanted him to be involved in future crimes, which he obviously didn't want to be a part of. And he doesn't want to go into the police station, he doesn't want to give them an interview or anything like that at first because he's so scared of Keen and DeMarcus, and like maybe they've got someone out who's going to see him going into the police station or something. So at first all he wants to give them is this call. And I mean, that's fair enough. Like, these people have been murdering a bunch of people over the last couple of days, so I think it's fair to assume that if they found out he was snitching, that they would probably kill him too. But he tells them about all of the murders they've committed over the last 2 days. He tells them the cars they've stolen and the stores they went to and all of that sort of stuff. So police start going back over all of these crimes for the last few days, and things start adding up. Like, all of the dots are connecting and everything he's saying makes sense, it all fits in. And police were really worried for Nicholas because they were worried that Keen and DeMarcus, like, they were so paranoid that they were going to go and shoot him as well because they'd probably gone and shot his friends, so why not him if he knew about everything? So they send a cruiser out to get him, but by the time they get to his house, he's already gone. And he actually, like, decided to go to the police station himself. Like, he changed his mind and decided to go in. When he gets to the police station, he tells them that currently they're driving around in the black Shadow Dodge that they had stolen from that woman at the gas station earlier. Now, later that night, at around the same time, so before the car like fully gets called in or anything like that, Police Sergeant John Huber is out. He's like scanning number plates, and he scans the number plate of the black Shadow Dodge as he comes past it. And he finds out that the plates do not belong to the car that's on, so immediately he calls it in. Like, he knows the car is stolen, but he doesn't know at the time that it's the car that's been stolen by these people who have been committing all of these crimes in Dayton at the moment, because, like I said, Nicholas is still at the police station talking to police, so I guess it just hasn't been, like, radioed out yet. So anyway, the car drives off, Sergeant Huber has called it in, and he starts following the car because it's a stolen car. About 2 blocks into him following them, DeMarcus jumps out of the car and runs away, but he's just one person. Like, there's more people in this car and it's a stolen car, so they decide to continue to follow the car. Like, this guy's on foot, he can't really get that far, surely. Like, either they stop and get one guy, or they keep going and get the other 3 people that are in the car, you know? Like, duh. So they keep following. Eventually he pulls the car over, thinking it's just a car that's been stolen by a bunch of people. But then after he goes up to the car, he finds a bunch of guns in there. He tells them to put their hands up, get out of the car, and they were all actually super cooperative and just got straight out of the car with their hands up. Later though, he actually finds out that when he pulled them over, Laura had told Keane to shoot him, but for some reason Keane decided not to, which is so lucky for him. They all went super easily, and Keane was found to be wearing a necklace from Wendy, he was wearing the coat from Danita, and he also had a knife in his pocket that belonged to Joseph, so immediately just tied to all 3 of these crimes. They found so much evidence on all of them to connect them to all of the crimes, so immediately they take them in for questioning. They also found DeMarcus at a house nearby, and once they found him, again, he came in pretty easily too. Like, there was no struggle or anything like that. They questioned them all separately. Laura Taylor, the 16-year-old, she was actually the only one who asked for a lawyer. The other 3 basically just started singing. They told police everything that had happened, everything that they had done over the last 3 days, but they showed no signs of remorse about any of it. Heather ended up making a deal so that she would tell police everything, she would testify to all of it so that she wouldn't get the death penalty, and Laura and DeMarcus were minors, so they legally couldn't get the death penalty either. Laura and Heather both got sentenced to life in prison and are currently serving time at the Ohio Reformatory for Women in Marysville, and DeMarcus Smith was also sentenced to life in prison and is serving it at the Mansfield Correctional Institute. Keane, however, was indicted by a grand jury on 8 counts of aggravated murder, 2 counts for Joseph Wilkerson, 2 counts for Wendy Cottrell, and 2 counts for Marvin Washington, and then 1 count each for Sarah Abraham and Danita Gillette. He was also indicted for 6 counts of aggravated robbery and 1 count of aggravated burglary, and he waived his right to a jury trial, instead was tried by a 3-judge panel. He was found guilty on every count, except they merged the 8 counts of murder, so it was just 5 counts rather than 8. Like, all the people with 2 counts of murder against him, they were all just merged into 1, so it was 1 for Joseph Wilkerson, 1 for Wendy Cottrell, 1 for Marvin Washington, 1 for Sarah Abraham, and 1 for Danita Gillette, and he was sentenced to death for each of these 5 people, so 5 death sentences. The 20th of July in 2009 was the day before he was set to be executed. He had his last meal at 4 p.m. that day, and let me just read you what he had because it's kind of ridiculous. He had a porterhouse steak with A1 sauce, a pound of jumbo fried shrimp with cocktail sauce, French fries, onion rings, both with ketchup, dinner rolls and butter, 2 plums, a mango, a pound of seedless white grapes, German chocolate cake, 2 bottles of Pepsi, and 2 bottles of A&W creaming soda, which is a lot of food. I'm pretty sure you're not even allowed to order that much food anymore for your last, like, death row meal. I'm pretty sure they've changed the laws on that because people were ordering like humongous amounts of food like that. Anyway, he spent the rest of the night watching TV and also writing a letter to somebody, but I'm not sure who. He was pacing up and down his cell all night. He was standing on his bed like he was super restless, and he actually had to get his attorney to get him like a pill to help him sleep because he was so anxious, as I'm sure you would be, knowing that you're gonna get put to death the next day. On the day of his execution, so the 21st of July, he ate some fruit, he had a shower, he spoke to his attorneys, and then he was transferred from Ohio State Penitentiary death row to Lucasville to be put to death by lethal injection. And his last words were, "I have no words." No friends, no family showed up. Apparently he didn't want them there. There was 7 people in the audience of the death chamber, and some of them were family members of his victims and also his attorneys. And then at 10:36 a.m. he was pronounced dead. And that is everything that I have on this case. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below, and I would also love to hear your thoughts on the death penalty. Like, do you think the death penalty should be a thing, or do you think that it should just be abolished completely? Let me know down below what your thoughts are, and hopefully I will see you guys in my next video. Bye guys!